Have you been on the fence about starting a podcast? You're not really sure if it's worth the time and energy that you'll need to put into it if you start one? Well, then today's episode is for you because I'm going to share with you 6 things that I saw happen in my business the minute I started my podcast. And it all happened really, really quickly. And if you're on the fence, this episode might just help you get off. So let's dive in. The first thing that I noticed when I started my podcast was I got exposure. Like if you set up your podcast correctly and you have it sent out to all the major podcast apps like Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, all of those apps, you get so many more eyeballs or ears on your content and who you are than you would have gotten before you had the podcast. And it's a great way to get your message out there that you wouldn't have had that opportunity before if you didn't have a podcast. So think about the exposure that you'll have just by starting a podcast, the new people that you'll be able to meet and impact and serve by having a podcast. The second thing that I noticed is I got instant authority in my niche. Because I talk about social media and entrepreneurship and maybe and also time-saving techniques and efficiency and things like that, all of a sudden I'm looked at as an expert because my competition or the people around me aren't doing the same thing I'm doing. I've created a platform for myself where I kind of stand out a little bit more. So think about that. If you're really looking to be a thought leader or an authority in your niche, consider podcasting. And here's one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to podcasting, if we could just take a little sidebar, is people who listen to podcasts are more likely to listen to the entire message than somebody, say, like on a YouTube channel or on a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, because those other channels, it's much easier for someone to click away or to swipe away. But with a podcast, it takes a little bit more effort to do it. Yes, it can be done, but people are more likely to sit there and listen through any sort of boring parts that might pop up in the podcast because they know a good part is coming. And they're a little bit more forgiving than, say, the video world or the social media world is. So think about that a little bit. And that kind of leads me into my third point, is it gives you influence. Because people are committing to listen to your episode and you're in their ears through earbuds or in the car during rush hour or whatever, you have influence as maybe a trainer or a trusted advisor or a mentor or somebody they look to get the latest and greatest information or training, whatever it is that your podcast is going to be about. It's amazing how quickly that influence takes place. The fourth thing that happens, which is really cool, is networking. And I have met so many people as a result of my podcast. I've interviewed people I would have never been introduced to before had I not had a podcast, because everybody has a message that they want to get out there, but not everybody has a podcast. And so they look to podcast hosts to help them get their message out there. And what that does is it goes back to exposure, right? So not only are you exposing their message to your audience, but your podcast and your message is getting exposed to your interview guests' audience, the person that you have on your show, you're getting exposed to their audience. And that is powerful. It's really, really powerful. And you gain kind of instant credibility with these people who you would have never met otherwise. And then my next one, I guess that's number 5, is collaborations. I have been so lucky because of doing interviews on my podcast and through the people I have met through networking through my podcast. I've been invited to collaborate on projects and things with other people who that would have never been something I would have been able to do. I mean, I probably could have done collaborations, but the runway would have been much longer. But that podcast just shortens that up so much. And again, it goes back to that credibility factor, the fact that you actually took the time to put together a podcast and get it out to the world, and you're consistent, and consistency is huge when it comes to podcasting. If I could go again on another sidebar, what you want to do is be very consistent in the episodes that you put out there. Meaning, if you're gonna do a podcast, commit to, I think, at least one episode a week. That might sound overwhelming, but if you batch record your podcasts in a day, you can easily knock out a month in 4 hours. Probably less than 4 hours, because I really think a podcast episode should be somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. If you go over 30 minutes, you're going to lose people. That's a lot of time to ask people to dedicate to your podcast, to listen to your podcast. So that's huge. Okay, number six is traffic. Increase traffic to all my social media channels, increase traffic to my YouTube channel, increase traffic to my blog, increase traffic to my website, increase traffic to my phone and email. All of those things is what I want, because it helps me with my networking efforts. It helps me gain new clients. It helps me gain new business. It's just a great tool to drive traffic to all the places you want people to go. So if you have the desire to start a podcast, what questions do you have? I would love to answer your questions. Maybe you have fears about doing a podcast. Maybe you want to know the technology that is involved in starting a podcast. What are your questions? Put them in the comment section below. I'll answer them, and who knows, it might be another episode on this YouTube channel. If you like this kind of content and you are enjoying learning from me, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode in the future. I'll see you next time. Oh, and by the way, if you want to tune into my podcast show, it is The Laura Shipman Show, and it is available on all of the major podcast apps such as iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and the Google Play Store. I'll see you next time.